Hello, and welcome back to the crew, part of our Next Chapter Woman podcast series. And I want to welcome Anne. Thanks for joining in today, Anne. Good to have you on board. Looking forward to our conversation as usual. We were talking a little while ago about what we wanted to have a talk about on today's session. And Anne and I came up with, well, let's talk about some of our not all of our last podcasts, but maybe one or two that kind of hit home and would leave some room for discussion with both Anne and myself. And so one of those is why calm is an underrated form of success. It's part of the podcast playlist that's on the channel. It thinks about or gets us to think about what happens when your life starts to become quiet. And so at this age, I think that might be kind of let's say, a common thing for people our age, maybe, that our lives do start to become a little bit calmer, definitely quieter. So good morning, Anne. I was wondering what do you think about that podcast and what did that bring up for you?
I've got a story to tell, as usual. But I just wanted to say, before this podcast, I'd been listening to another podcast from, again, an older grey-haired lady like us, and she was talking about how becoming an introvert becomes easier as you get older because you can get the quiet that you crave. So it's that kind of goes along with the same theme here. The story I wanted to tell about that definitely came up when I was listening to your podcast on how calm is a form of success is many years ago, at least 20 years ago now, when I was learning coaching. I attended a workshop. Can't even remember what the workshop was on, but part of this workshop is how do you define success for yourself? And so way back then, and the kind of coaching that I did was very intuitive and it goes very deep. And so the definition of success was always what's coming from you. It can't be I'm making lots of money because that's an external thing. I want to become famous because that's an external thing. It's what's actually true for you, right? And what can you define daily as success for yourself? Well, long story short, mine came out as I feel successful when I've spent the day in my housecoat. And this is going back over 20 years. So this was when I was much more of the busy person involved in big things and small things in life, all of the rest of it. And so it was kind of, yeah, that is so true. And this is a bit of an aside, but I left my first husband, just wasn't working out between us. His way of doing things and where he wanted to go was not where I wanted to go. And this goes back to early 80s. So we're going back a long time here. But one of the things that he said to me that really made me go, oh, was, I don't want to see you in your housecoat. And no, he didn't mean he wanted to see me out of my housecoat. He meant that I was being a slovenly person if I'm in my housecoat, right? So, excuse me. It was quite interesting when, many years later, here I am defining success for myself as somebody who stays in their housecoat, because what that means for me is I am being myself. And I mean, obviously, I'm not going to stay in my housecoat all day. But I'm definitely one of those people that as soon as I come home from work or being outside, I take my bra off. First thing that happens, oh no, take my shoes off. I take my bra off. It's that relaxing into, here I am in my safe place, because my housecoat just gets warm enough at home or at my kids' places when I stay over, right? So it's me just being relaxed and feeling safe and obviously feeling calm. And when I did another exercise defining, this wasn't in a workshop, this was what came about with me coaching myself, looking into myself and using coaching tools on myself. was, what do I want to be? I mean, where do I want to be? And I'm trying to think of the actual words that came across. Yeah, what is it that I'm looking for? These aren't the exact words that I'm paraphrasing here. But what I realized is my favorite way of being, or my favorite place in being, is peaceful, right? Is having peace. And of course, that means calm to me. It doesn't mean all sorts of things. Some people, it's, standing at the top of a mountain, those kinds of things where you find peace. But for me, it's lack of drama. So I don't want too much drama in my life. Somehow we always have drama. I've thought of becoming a hermit and running away from the entire world. So there's always where there's people, there's drama. And so it's learning how to deal with it. And as part of the becoming calm is being able to say no and not doing things you don't want to do, because that causes internal drama. You're fighting with yourself. And that goes straight to those shoulds. I should be doing this, or I shouldn't be doing that, and I shouldn't feel this way, or I shouldn't feel guilty about something. So it goes to those kind of things. So how to be calm and peaceful is absolutely a definition of success for me. I think that's become, once I spent 20 years realizing how to become calm in my life. It's the challenge now to me is to be calm in situations which trigger me, in situations which I find so at the moment it's sad, right? So the things that are going on in the world, and some of the surprises that are coming up about people who I had a particular view of, and I'm still trying to understand how that view has been now totally skewed. And that makes me sad and not calm, not sad in the calm sense, calm in the sad in the disturbed sense. And so I'm trying to understand how to, let that go. It's obviously not me. Yeah, and I'm not quite sure about that. How to let go of something which has disturbed me, to stay calm. Yes, there we go. Don't know the answer yet.
Oh, darn. Because where my head was going, I thought, okay, well, I want to know. And maybe I open this up and we'll get some comments, to this portion, like, how do people do that? How do we do that? What are things that we've tried that were not successful? I mean, after all, we've been, I think, and given our age, I mean, we've been trying to do this for years. As you said, it was about 20 years ago that you started down this path. So, yes, and in addition to that, the definition of calm, what does that mean? It's different for all of us. And I think different for all of us, given the stage, the chapter of our life that we're in at the time. It could be slightly different. So I'd just like to throw that back to you for a second. So what have you discovered for yourself that works for you to get to that place of quiet and calm?
Yeah, it's absolutely been a challenge. Just wanted to comment on your thing about being calm at different stages of our lives. And 25 years ago, I had two kids born within 18 months of each other, both of them premature. And, in that time, being calm would have been able to step outside and take a breath. It's kind of, right, then you get right back in it, right? So, there are little tiny portions of calm, but they can make they could still make all of the difference, right? So the length of it doesn't necessarily make any difference. But I think now, where I'm at now, calm is a necessary state for regulation, right? To regulate my my heartbeat, my blood pressure, all of those things that keep me alive or don't. So for regulating those, as well as my own emotional, whatever's going on, as I said, being upset at what's going on right now, and my own energy, right? Bring my energy back into me, not throw it outside or whatever, being hooked onto something else. And I've heard it in other podcasts from people on things like aging, is that we do have a finite amount of energy. I never thought that way when I was younger. Now I feel it. And therefore we choose what to spend our energy on with more discernment. Another thing that you said in that Calm podcast, more discerning about giving away my energy. But it's not just giving away my energy. It's also giving away myself, in all of those times when I was doing things that I didn't actually want to do. So learning to become calm. I was generally a person, this is how I thought of myself. I thought of myself as a person that could say no easily. I live 4,000 miles away from my birth family, and my sisters are the ones still currently living in the UK. And I was happy to leave because one of the things that I did not like and couldn't say no to at that time was the whole, at Christmas one year we have to spend it with your mother, the next year we have to spend it at his mother, my mother, and Sunday dinners, who do we go to Sunday dinners with? All of those types of things. I really didn't like obligation. And I did have a big research for myself into obligation. There it goes again, my hair. And when I realized that duty and obligation, although they sound like the same thing, they don't mean the same thing to me in my I was going to say in my head, but it's actually in my heart. So I distinguish them as in an obligation is doing something that you should do, whereas with a duty is something that I feel like doing from my heart. And I mean, I'm putting words, definitions onto something that may not have the correct definition or whatever in English. Because there are some things we don't actually have words for, and emotive things are generally what English is poor at. So, duty comes from my heart. When something's an obligation, I'm doing it, but not because I want to, because I feel I should. And those are the things that actually take way more energy than we ever thought. Or maybe they didn't way back then, but I don't think so, because I remember doing a lot of obligation type stuff. On weekends, I would be knackered, right? I would be so tired that whenever I got a chance to slow down, I would literally just need to sleep. And I didn't actually know at that time. It was because I'm extending all of my energy doing things that I don't actually want to do, or being in circumstances which makes me uncomfortable, which uses up energy. We don't feel that we're using up energy doing that, but it actually does. So I've learned, a lot since then. And so now I'm not doing things that are obligation. And that was way harder than I thought it was. I thought I was I've been called brutally honest. So I thought I was a fairly brusque, upfront, I do what I want to do kind of person. But the more I dug into it, the more I realized, oh boy, I definitely do all of these people-pleasing things. And to be able to stop them meant giving things up, like friendships, which were causing way more drama than I could handle, or way more obligation than I wanted to, and I could no longer cope. And trying to change the circumstances or the environment or help somebody else understand if I'm pulling away in the long run, didn't make any difference at all. I'm not one for just cutting people off or ghosting them. I like to be able to say as much as I can and ameliorate as much as I can. Not that that necessarily makes any difference. So I learned to become more honest about what I was feeling or what I was wanting. Maybe that's a better way of putting it. More honest about what I was wanting and what I was not wanting. But also taking on the responsibility to make sure that that was real and maybe not just a superficial something or other instead. Am I avoiding anything? Am I distracting from anything? Am I, distancing from something just because, those kind of things? It takes that thought beforehand. So these are generally not quick things that you can just do. Some of them are. Can't think of any of those right now. But mostly they go into, okay, what's really true for me, and what do I need, and then what do I want. So yeah, being more honest. And there are some situations in which that automatically writes itself off.
I was also thinking, thank you for your comments, for your personal comments. And because you're a coach, so not to, of course, not naming any names or giving too many details away, but for the people that you work with, do you have a sense of what these things are for them, like finding that calm amongst them and how they do that?
So when does a person come to a coach? It's because, I can't deal with this anymore. I need help. That's when they come to a coach. And generally, that's, yes, there are certain classes of people that I don't coach. A coach can't deal with people who need what I'll call therapy. But these are just normal people living their normal lives and going, why can't I cope with this? Why can't I do this? And that's often involves other people. It very involves other people. Now, that's not the reason, because it's never about something else. It's always about you, me. Why can't I do this? But invariably, it initially comes out as, this person is doing this and I can't stand that. Or this person is not doing this and I want that. Right? Those are the two things. So definitely, it comes up in coaching most of the time. To start with, then we get down to the deeper issues. But yeah,
I think that's one of the really neat things about coaching, because it does have that space that it's not medical. Like it's not, well, medical, physical, there's not that piece to it. So it tends to help people think through things and make adjustments. Well, not tends, it does help people think through things for themselves and make adjustments for themselves rather than something that's prescribed by like a psychologist, psychiatrist, a medical professional. So I think there's a big place in the world for coaching. And a little riff on that, I think partly there's a big space for that because our family units aren't the same as they were before. Like, well, I don't know about every family, but definitely my family, we were able to talk through things. We had a community around us that was, because it was closer knit. So it wasn't necessarily family. It was also friends who were looking out for us. As I was raising my girls, I opened it up to my friends and my family to, feel free if you want to have some sort of a relationship there with my girls that you think you can help with, whatever that may be, please feel free. You don't need my permission at the moment. And I think nowadays, for a lot of families, that might be missing a bit. And so that coaching opportunity is at a level where, like, I think pretty much everybody knows a coach or knows how to find one. And so that conversation comes a little bit easier. to answer that question about how do I get to that place of calm, I think in thinking back, for me, it comes in two ways. When it's really bad, I go to the mountain. I just go to the top of the mountain. I sit there and I'm there until I'm ready to come down and to rejoin the world. So those people who know me well, it kind of looks like I'm escaping, which I guess I am. On the less drastic way, on a week by week, yes, as we're older and we're in business or we're working really hard, raising kids, trying to fit in all those pieces, I would just physically get a cup of tea and I would sit in my chair, and I called it having a meeting with myself. And literally, I would do that, and I would work through, every little scenario that I could. Sometimes I would take notes. That's because you tend to go around and around and around about the same situation and you don't progress. So I would have a meeting with myself, and that's where I would, and maybe not resolve everything in that meeting, but I left that space. And in conjunction with that, I also set aside time, well, one day a week. You know me, it's Worry Wednesday. And so I would set aside Wednesday and I would plug in all that worrying that I could into Wednesday and not even try to solve anything. I would just be able to tune my channel to the worrying, and then during the rest of the week I could not worry as much. So that's what I've done to sort of get through that time. And now, I need Worry Wednesdays less and less because, of course, at this age, we are allowed to be a little bit calmer. We're not quite as busy. It's just easier now, is what I find. So, what would you say to someone who's obviously struggling as a, and maybe they're not hiring you as a coach. They're not in a coaching relationship with you, but what would you say in passing to them if they didn't come to you and ask for help, but you had the feeling that there maybe would be something that you could say or do that might help them?
Bit of a difficult question because it comes up in all sorts of different ways. And unless that person has come to me, or there's somebody I know well, I leave it up to come into the conversation organically. And it generally does. I don't know necessarily why. I've been told that people will open up to me because I listen and because I generally care. On my side of things, what it feels like, what it is curiosity. How are you? What's going on in your life? It seems as though maybe there's something that's not quite right. Do you want to open up, or do you want to talk about it, or whatever, those kinds of things. But it has to come up organically. I would say that I used to be still am, not used to. Yeah. But nowadays I'll hold my opinions to myself more than I used to. That's the only difference. And definitely, 40, 50 years ago, I would have given unsolicited advice. Now, that didn't help me in the least because I get pissed off when people don't take my advice. Don't work for either one of us, right? There are other situations where I just need to say something, in which case it's kind of, I just need to say something here. And sometimes that is to calm somebody down, some to just help somebody. God, I'm going back a long time here now. But there was a situation where it was a 2-year-old. It was a 2-year-old going absolutely crazy. His parents didn't know what to do about that. All I did was go up and hold him. And then sometimes that's what people need, a hug. or something that thing to calm them down. So yeah, it really depends on the circumstance. But unless I'm asked, I'm not as likely to give unsolicited advice as I would. I'd be curious, because obviously I don't know what's going on for that person. I try not to make assumptions. I'm obviously making, what do you call them, judgments on, what do I think I can help with here in the first place? But then I open up to listening to what that person is actually saying, and then trying to also listen to what's deeper than that, what's really going on for them. And that's usually the case. So when somebody comes with something, for example, like, I can't stand living with this person, and there's not a lot I can do about it, and I'm not talking about a spouse or a partner, then look at, okay, what do I think is possibly going on here, other than just the uncomfortable dynamic of two very incompatible people. There's loads of things that are going on, and those are the things to ask the questions. And oftentimes, just me asking the questions will help the other person think about it for themselves. So yes, that's what I would say to that rather difficult question.
Exactly. So I think I'm going to give some feedback on a personal level, in that and I know you'll remember the time, but I came to you, as not as a coach, but as a as a friend. I guess I didn't really realize at the beginning of that, how well, I wasn't in bad shape, but how I kind of needed some help, but didn't know that I needed some help, right? And so one of the, I'll just bare the soul here. What stood out for me in that conversation, Anne, was the very first thing you did. I mean, maybe you could tell by my voice. I think it was just a phone call that we were on, so you couldn't see my face, but you could probably tell from my voice. The very first thing that came out of your mouth was, "Are you safe? Are you okay?" And like, I don't know, some angel must have put those thoughts into your head, because like, how would you know to even ask that question? And so then oh yes, I am safe. I'm okay. But the feeling that I had from you asking that question, I can't describe it. It was like being wrapped in a blanket of care and concern. That even though the things that I was struggling with were in my head, your concern for my safety was was a big deal at that time. So, thank you for that. I'm not sure where that fits in our conversation, but maybe it fits in that place when we are watching someone else that we know struggle with something. Those things. Well, what do we do? What can we do? So there was that. And then for the rest of the conversation that I had with you, you did put on the coach hat a bit, but there was just that feeling of care and concern that came, not trying to fix anything, not trying to point me in one direction or another, not trying to change situations. It was just more just asking the odd question. Like, it didn't feel like a interrogation at all. It was questioning coming out for my well-being, and making me think. So I thank you for that.
You're welcome. I think you might have said it in the last podcast, but I've certainly heard recently, and is true, very true. Which is, when I said, "Are you safe?" I actually had no recollection of where that came from or why I said it. Other than generally, what needs to be done initially, because somebody, when they do that call out of the blue, they're desperate, right? And it's often this kind of thing. I'm not saying you were. No, not at all. I'm just saying that that's what I found from other people. And of course, really the first thing you have to do is to calm them down, because you can't get anything out of the bit of things, right? Nothing that's actually real for them and what they need to do. And with you, out came, are you safe? Oftentimes it's all, I will say, like, take a breath, and I'll breathe with somebody for 3 breaths so that they get the calm thing. And then, as you said, you can think more, you have more discernment, you think more clearly, and you can think more creatively when your brain is calm. So, so that's oftentimes when a person is in that situation, just need to bring them down for that. That was all I wanted to say on that one.
Yeah. And we're talking, I was thinking, speaking out loud. Because me and going up to the top of the mountain and or sitting in my chair having a meeting with myself, there's no words coming out and coming back in through my ears, right? Uh, and so that's why things go around and around and around. And when you have family that's, you know, close enough, and I don't mean in proximity, but I mean that you can share things with, even if you don't think you need to share them, it just comes out in the conversation. And again, what it relates to prayer. Why do we pray out loud? Well, we pray out loud so that it comes out and it gets fed back in through our auditory system. And there's something that happens with that. I can't explain it. So in saying something out loud to a friend or a person who cares about you, then it it helps because we have said it out loud. So half the time our brain is going to work on some of those things anyway. And what you say about, being that caring person who's listening to this, you said, I let them talk. I let them get it out so that the which, by the way, I was doing when I talked to you that day, but it gives it time for that to calm. And I think that's one of the biggest things that I've learned. I hope that, as always, that we're giving some food for thought to those people who are listening in. A reminder that the podcast sessions that I've put in the playlist, those are tending to be about me. As I walk through and enter a new chapter of my life. So the most recent podcasts to those are about me and my journey. We're not trying to fix anything, but you know what? That podcast gives me that opportunity to feed it back. I say it out loud and I come back in through my ears, and I'm learning the whole time that we're doing this. So that's why I do the podcast, not necessarily to save the world or to save anybody else, but it's mostly for me and my journey. And I appreciate that Anne and others have opened themselves to sitting with me during these podcast sessions and giving me the opportunity to hear from others' experience and to learn and grow from them. So I thank you, Anne. And we've been probably long enough for this episode, but I want to give you an opportunity before we close to whatever it is that you'd like to say, to turn that mic back on.
Yeah, I think what you brought up with me, you were talking about, prayer and speaking to yourself, and how that is different to speaking to other people and even praying with other people. I mean, there is power in prayer in a number of different ways. But there is a scientific explanation behind what you were talking about. So the way our brain processes information is different when we actually talk, when we talk to other people, when we pray, right? The brain actually functions differently. Different people take in information differently. That's another reason too. So sometimes you have to help somebody. I'm going to get into another story here. I was listening to another friend the other day that called me up out of the blue. And she knows a lot of the stuff I know. So it's kind of, whoa, hang on a minute. Just slow down. Let's get into some deeper stuff here. And I'm not sure I have ever said this to anybody before, but it was, okay, I hear what you're saying. I'm not understanding what you're saying. I might be hearing it in a different way. So I think maybe, and I know she's also somebody who doesn't write down, because journaling is a thing we often recommend to people. And I was saying that I know you don't write things down, but maybe just write down the things you've just said to me. And then you might realize how ridiculous they sound.
It goes back to my taking notes. I don't journal, but I take notes. All right. Well, Anne, thank you so much for spending time with us this morning, with me and with those listening in. And it's always enjoyable, definitely. Always learning moments here and there throughout the conversation. Definitely opening up that box that's inside of us all and letting some new things come in and wiggle around in there and to think about and to learn and grow. And so I really do appreciate you spending the time with us. And I invite you next time we get together with the crew, and we'll have some new topics. And don't forget, to those listening out there, put some comments in that comment box that's there on YouTube, and we'll not try to solve all the problems of your world, but definitely writing it and saying it out loud are going to be a help. So I look forward to looking at those comments and responding. And as I know Anne will as well, she's quite active in the comment section. So until next time, take care and bye for now.